23 years ago, Captain Elias Trent stood on the observation deck of the human starship Aurora. The stars stretched endlessly before him, shimmering like diamonds scattered across a black velvet sky. Humanity had only recently begun its formal contact with alien civilizations, and this mission, to the Galathian Empire, was considered both dangerous and prestigious. Elias was a man of quiet strength. His reputation as a disciplined officer and a fair diplomat had reached far beyond the fleet. Yet he felt the same nervous thrill that any human would feel standing on the threshold of an alien empire. The Galathians were legendary, towering, elegant, and highly intelligent, with a culture that prized tradition and precision above all else. And he would soon meet Princess Lysera, the empire's heir and a figure spoken of with both awe and caution. The Aurora glided silently through the Galathian space gates. Elias, along with his team, wore formal uniforms, the gold trims catching the soft lights of the docking station. Every gesture, every move had been rehearsed for months. Diplomacy with the Galathians required precision. One small misstep could create offense, even unintentionally. When they arrived at the palace, Elias could hardly believe his eyes. It was unlike anything on Earth. Towers of crystal rose high into the sky, reflecting light and colors that shifted with every angle. Bridges of transparent material connected platforms floating above pools of liquid that seemed to glow from within. The entire palace was alive with motion and energy, yet it radiated an almost eerie calm. They were greeted by the Galathian court, diplomats, advisors, and guards, all moving with exacting grace. And then the moment came. The great hall doors opened, and there she was, Princess Lysera. She was taller than any human, her skin iridescent in the light, her eyes sharp and intelligent. Her movements were precise, almost like a dance, yet carried the weight of authority. Elias stepped forward, offering the formal bow of respect. Lysera's eyes swept over him, calculating, assessing. He could feel the court holding its breath, the silence thick with anticipation. "Captain Trent," she said, her voice melodic but cold. "You have traveled far to meet us. Humans are curious creatures. You claim wisdom. Yet I wonder how such a species can survive among the stars without constant guidance." The words hit like a cold wind. Elias felt a flush of surprise but quickly suppressed it. He could feel the eyes of his fellow humans, unsure if he would answer. Many would have retorted, defending humanity with pride and anger. But Elias had learned something invaluable in his years of service. Strength was often shown not through words, but through calm and control. He said nothing. Instead, he simply stood straight, held his gaze for a moment, and then, without a word, turned and walked away. His steps were measured, deliberate. He left the hall with dignity, not in anger, not in retreat, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew his worth without needing to prove it. The court was stunned. Murmurs rippled through the Galathians. It was unheard of for a human to respond with silence to such an insult. Princess Lysera herself was momentarily taken aback, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. She had expected fury, prideful words, or perhaps a clumsy attempt at humor. Instead, she saw only resolve. As Elias walked down the marble corridors, he thought about the choices that had brought him here. Diplomacy was not just about negotiating treaties or shaking hands. It was about understanding, patience, and sometimes restraint. A single word spoken in anger could undo months of preparation. He remembered his father's lessons. "Elias," he had said, "there are battles you fight with strength and battles you fight with silence. Know the difference and you will win more than most." Elias had never forgotten those words, and now they guided him in this moment. The human delegation waited in a smaller chamber, exchanging whispers and concerned glances. Some were upset that Elias had not defended humanity's honor. Others were secretly impressed. Among them was Lieutenant Mara Chen, Elias's second-in-command. She approached him quietly. "Captain," she said softly, "was that wise? She insulted you in front of everyone. Some might see it as weakness to walk away." Elias turned to her, his expression calm. "Mara, strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Today we show that humans are not rash. We do not need to answer every insult to prove our worth. Actions speak louder than words." Mara nodded slowly, though she could not hide the admiration in her eyes. It was rare to see a man who commanded respect not by force but by control. Meanwhile, back in the Grand Hall, Princess Lysera returned to her throne, trying to maintain her composure. Yet she could not shake the image of the human who had simply walked away. For all her experience, she had not expected such restraint. Curiosity replaced irritation. Who was this man that he could hold himself with such calm in the face of mockery? Over the following days, the delegation explored the palace and the city of Galathia. Elias observed everything carefully, the architecture, the ceremonies, the culture. He noticed how deeply the Galathians valued order and tradition. Every gesture, every phrase, every action carried meaning. He realized that to survive here, one had to be patient, perceptive, and above all, dignified. In private meetings, Elias began discussions about trade and exploration. He was firm yet respectful, navigating the intricate customs of the Galathians. Though some diplomats found the alien rules frustrating, Elias handled each situation with grace. His team learned quickly that diplomacy was not about winning arguments. It was about building trust. Princess Lysera watched from a distance. She observed how humans interacted, how Elias led his people, and how he remained composed despite the pressure of her initial insult. She had thought humans were impulsive and brash, yet here was a man demonstrating patience, intelligence, and restraint. One evening, as the twin moons of Galathia cast silver light across the palace gardens, Lysera spoke quietly to her closest advisor. "That human," she said, "he is different. I cannot understand it fully, but there is something in him that commands attention, not through words but through presence." Her advisor nodded. "He is an unusual man, Princess. Rarely do humans show such control. It is admirable." Lysera frowned, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Perhaps," she murmured, "I underestimated them. Perhaps my first impression was wrong." Meanwhile, Elias sat in his quarters aboard the Aurora, reviewing the day's events. He thought about the insult, the court, and the princess. Yet instead of resentment, he felt clarity. Diplomacy was a long game, and humans had only just begun to make their mark in the galaxy. One day, perhaps, they would be judged not by their impulsive reactions, but by their strength of character and the ability to endure. He also knew that the memory of this encounter would remain with him, and perhaps with the Galathians, for years to come. It was a lesson in patience, strategy, and dignity. A simple walk away done with confidence and purpose could echo louder than any shouted words or hasty arguments. As the night deepened, Elias looked out at the stars once more. The galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations both magnificent and dangerous, yet he felt a quiet determination. Humanity had a role to play, and he would ensure it was one defined by respect, wisdom, and strength. And somewhere in the halls of the Galathian palace, Princess Lysera thought of the human who had walked away. For the first time, she wondered if humans were not to be underestimated, and if the man who had refused to fight with words might one day teach her a lesson she could never forget. The encounter was brief, the insult sharp, but the impact was profound. It was the beginning of a story that would stretch across decades, shaping alliances, perceptions, and the future of humanity among the stars. And for Elias Trent, the choice was simple: walk away with dignity and tact and let history take note. 23 years had passed since Captain Elias Trent walked away from Princess Lysera's insult in the grand halls of the Galathian palace. For some, that moment had faded into distant memory, a footnote in the annals of diplomacy. For others, it had become a legend, whispered in corridors of power and in lecture halls across the human colonies. Elias had long since returned to Earth, but his life had changed profoundly. He had been promoted to the rank of fleet commander, overseeing humanity's expanding presence among the stars. The events on Galathia had taught him lessons that guided every decision he made: patience, perception, and the quiet strength of restraint. Yet even decades later, the memory of the Galathian court lingered, not as a painful moment but as a turning point. Every time he faced a difficult negotiation, he remembered the power of silence. Every time he witnessed conflict, he recalled how walking away from provocation could sometimes be the most effective action. Back on Earth, the story of Elias's encounter had been analyzed endlessly by scholars, diplomats, and students alike. Some argued that he had missed an opportunity to defend human honor. Others insisted that his refusal to engage verbally had demonstrated a rare and admirable maturity. To outsiders, it seemed a small moment, but within the realm of interstellar politics, it had far-reaching consequences. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Galathian Empire did not forget either. Lysera herself had grown from a sharp-tongued princess into a wise and respected queen. The years had been kind in some ways and harsh in others. She had faced challenges, rebellions, and crises that tested her leadership daily. Yet the image of the human who had walked away from her insult remained vivid in her memory. It was a memory that troubled her in unexpected ways. She had always been confident, sharp, and skilled at reading others, yet Elias Trent had been different. She could not easily gauge his character or predict his reactions. His calmness, his dignity, his refusal to react in anger, it had made her question assumptions she had long held about humans. Were they impulsive? Rash? Perhaps not. Perhaps there was more to them than she had believed. Galathian scholars debated the incident for years. Some claimed it was an example of human weakness, a refusal to defend honor. Others argued it was strategic brilliance, a subtle demonstration that humans measured power differently. It became a case study, cited in schools and in political debates. The human who walked away unshaken and changed the perception of an entire empire with nothing more than his presence and composure. For Elias, life continued steadily. He oversaw the expansion of human colonies, the development of new starships, and the training of diplomats capable of interacting with alien civilizations. Yet he never lost sight of the lesson learned on Galathia, that strength often lies in restraint. His team respected him, not for loud speeches or displays of power, but for his clarity of thought, calm demeanor, and ability to lead without arrogance. Despite the years, Elias never heard directly from Princess Lysera again, until reports of Galathian politics began to filter through human channels. The empire had changed in subtle ways. Lysera, now queen, had become a figure of respect and influence. Stories of her early years as princess often mentioned the human who had defied her expectations. She had grown to admire the quiet strength he had shown. In a world where words could ignite wars, the restraint of a single man could inspire reflection and understanding. On Earth, Elias occasionally reflected on what might have happened had he responded differently. If he had spoken in anger, if he had tried to prove humanity's worth through words, would the Galathians have seen humans differently? Perhaps, but he had chosen another path. That choice had shaped not only his own career, but the way humans were perceived throughout the galaxy. Mara Chen, now an experienced officer and trusted advisor to Elias, often reminded him of the significance of that moment. "You know, Captain," she said one day during a briefing, "that walk, it became something more than you might imagine. Some historians say it was the first real sign that humans could be trusted, that we had patience, discipline, and courage." Elias nodded. "It was never about the insult itself," he said quietly. "It was about showing that we are capable of rising above immediate reactions. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is patience." Even in human media, the story of that encounter had become symbolic. Children read books about it. Scholars analyze the decision in universities. Military officers discussed it as a lesson in leadership. Elias's choice to walk away had become more than a personal act. It had become a statement about humanity's potential. Across the galaxy, Galathians debated the implications as well. While some still questioned why the human had not reacted in prideful defiance, others argued that he had demonstrated a new form of power. The Galathians had long valued displays of skill, cunning, and authority. Yet Elias Trent had proven that true influence could come from control and measured action, even in the face of insult. Queen Lysera, now fully in her role, often reflected on that day. She remembered the sharp sting of embarrassment, the way the court had shifted when Elias simply turned and walked away. It had unsettled her, challenged her assumptions, and over time made her curious. What kind of being could act with such restraint and confidence? She had followed his career quietly, reading reports of his achievements, watching as humanity matured under his guidance. The years had brought perspective. Lysera realized that humans were not brash, reckless creatures, as many Galathians assumed. They were thoughtful, resilient, and capable of actions that demanded respect, and Elias Trent, in his calm and dignified way, had become a symbol of that potential. Elias himself never sought recognition for the incident. He considered it simply part of his duty, an exercise in composure, a demonstration of patience. Yet the effect of his actions had been profound. Diplomats who had witnessed the event carried the story with them for years. Some used it as a model for training, others as a warning of the power of restraint. Humanity had entered the galactic stage at a delicate moment. Many alien civilizations viewed them with skepticism. The walkaway incident had done more than preserve dignity. It had shifted perceptions, opening doors that might have otherwise remained closed. Aliens who had once seen humans as impulsive now recognized a capacity for measured judgment and strategic thought. Even within Elias's own family, the story persisted. His children grew up hearing of the encounter, not as a tale of anger or revenge, but as an example of quiet courage. "It is better to walk with your head held high than to shout and lose your balance," his daughter once said, repeating his words. And Captain Trent proved that a long time ago. Yet Elias understood that the story was only part of the larger journey. The galaxy was vast, full of civilizations with histories, traditions, and powers beyond imagination. Humanity had only begun to carve its path. Every choice, every act of diplomacy, would contribute to the growing reputation of humans among the stars. And the walkaway, though a single moment, had planted a seed of respect that would grow over decades. For Queen Lysera, the years had brought clarity as well. She had learned that pride could be tempered with understanding, that strength could be shown in ways that did not rely on dominance or insult. Watching humanity through the lens of Elias Trent's actions had taught her lessons about patience, strategy, and the hidden depths of other species. As the galaxy continued to spin, humans and Galathians alike would carry the memory of that moment. For some, it was a curious incident. For others, it was a turning point in interstellar relations. And for Elias Trent, it was a reminder that sometimes the simplest choices, walking away instead of reacting, could echo louder than 1,000 words. He often thought about the future. If he could maintain patience and clarity in moments of tension, then humanity could navigate the complex politics of the galaxy. If they could rise above insults, provocations, and misunderstandings, then they could demonstrate the qualities that defined their civilization: resilience, wisdom, and integrity. And somewhere, across the stars, Queen Lysera remembered him, not with bitterness, not with regret, but with growing respect. The human who had refused to answer her insult had taught her a lesson she would never forget: that strength is not always measured in words, and that true dignity often lies in the quiet, steady decisions one makes in the face of provocation. The galaxy had changed, slowly but inevitably, shaped by the actions of a single man and the impression he left on an alien empire. And the story, though rooted in a single encounter, was only beginning. The walkaway had become legend not because of anger or pride, but because it revealed something essential about humans: their ability to endure, to observe, and to act with patience and purpose. And as the stars continued to shine across the void, both humans and Galathians would remember the lesson, carried quietly but powerfully across time. 23 years had passed since Captain Elias Trent had walked away from Princess Lysera's insult. In that time, humanity had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident in its place among the stars. Elias himself had become a figure of legend, known not just for his achievements in exploration, but for his unmatched diplomacy and calm judgment. Now, as Commander Trent stood on the bridge of the Aurora Prime, he could hardly believe that fate had brought him back to Galathia. This time it was not as a junior officer on a first mission, but as the representative of an entire human fleet. Humanity's presence in the galaxy had grown significant, and diplomatic relations with powerful alien civilizations had become essential. The Galathian Empire, proud and influential, was key among them. Elias adjusted his uniform, straightened his posture, and took a deep breath. The palace where he had first met Princess Lysera now loomed closer through the viewport. Even from a distance it shimmered like a jewel, crystalline towers glinting under the twin suns of Galathia. Memories of that day, of her sharp words, of the court's shocked silence, floated into his mind. Yet he felt no anger, only anticipation. This was no longer a personal test. This was diplomacy on the highest level. The human delegation had been briefed extensively. Every custom, Every protocol, every ceremonial gesture of the Galathians had been studied for months. Still, Elias knew that no amount of preparation could replace presence, perception, and composure. And of all the challenges he might face, one would remain unpredictable: Queen Lysera herself. As the Aurora Prime docked, the hall doors opened once again, revealing Lysera. She was older now, the years adding a quiet grace to her commanding presence. Her once sharp gaze had softened slightly, though it remained keen and perceptive. She had heard of the man who now commanded the human fleet, had read reports of his strategic mind, and had followed humanity's growth under his guidance. When Elias stepped into the hall, the air seemed to shift. Memories of the past collided with the present. Lysera's eyes met his, and for a moment time seemed suspended. She remembered the day he had walked away, refusing to engage, refusing to fight verbally. Now she saw him again, older, more confident, and yet unchanged in the qualities that had impressed her so long ago. Elias approached with a respectful bow, his expression calm. "Your Majesty," he said, voice steady, "it is an honor to return to Galathia under more peaceful circumstances." Lysera inclined her head slightly, her lips curving into the faintest hint of a smile. "Commander Trent," she replied, "it is rare to see a human return not as a visitor, but as a leader of a fleet. I trust your journey was uneventful?" Elias allowed a small, polite smile. "Uneventful, though the voyage reminded us of the beauty of your system. It is a privilege to stand here once again." The court watched quietly, murmurs rippling as the human commander and the Galathian queen exchanged measured words. There was no insult this time, no flash of tension, only mutual assessment, and an unspoken recognition of each other's achievements. After the initial formalities, Lysera led Elias and his delegation to a private chamber within the palace. It was a room of quiet elegance, the soft light reflecting off polished surfaces, the view of Galathia's sprawling city stretching far below. "Commander," Lysera began, folding her hands, "I must admit I have followed your career with interest. Humanity has changed a great deal in the past 2 decades. You have guided them wisely," Elias nodded. "Your Majesty, humans have learned much, and we have learned from our interactions with civilizations like yours. Diplomacy requires patience, observation, and the willingness to understand others on their own terms." Lysera studied him closely. There was no arrogance in his tone, no attempt to impress with grand statements. Instead, there was a calm confidence, a steady assurance that spoke louder than any boast could. For the first time, she felt that the impression he had left on her court so many years ago was not only justified, but understated. "You were young the last time we met," Lysera said carefully, "and I was, perhaps, too sharp in my words. At the time I did not understand your restraint, your silence. Now I think I have come to understand it better." Elias inclined his head slightly. "Silence is often misunderstood. Many see it as weakness when in fact it can be a form of strength. It allows one to assess, to reflect, and to act wisely. That lesson is as true today as it was 23 years ago." Lysera's eyes flickered with a mixture of respect and curiosity. It seems humans have much to teach us after all. Their conversation continued, moving from formalities to discussions of politics, trade, and security. Both had changed over the years, but the qualities that defined them remained intact. Elias's calm intelligence, Lysera's keen perception. Together they navigated delicate subjects, each careful not to provoke tension but to build understanding. Despite the formality, there was an undercurrent of history. Neither could forget the first encounter, and both recognized the significance of the present reunion. Elias had matured, yet he still carried the same quiet strength. Lysera had grown wiser, yet she still remembered the sharp sting of embarrassment from that day. Now, however, respect and curiosity replaced anger and doubt. In the days that followed, Elias toured Galathia's capital, observing the culture with the same perceptive eye as decades before. He noted the ways Lysera had influenced her people, guiding the empire with intelligence, fairness, and vision. It was clear that she was not only a leader by title, but by skill, wisdom, and insight. At the same time, he began to see the ways in which humanity's reputation had shifted among the Galathians. Stories of his past actions, combined with reports of human diplomacy and exploration, had changed how many viewed his species. Humans were no longer impulsive outsiders. They were capable allies, worthy of respect and trusted partners in the galaxy. Lysera watched closely as Elias interacted with her advisors and Galathian officials. She observed how he spoke with clarity, how he listened with patience, and how he navigated delicate conversations without losing composure. She realized that the human's reputation was not based on one moment alone, but on decades of consistent action, integrity, and leadership. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the palace, Elias and Lysera met in the gardens. The air was cool and filled with the soft hum of alien flora. Lysera turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Commander Trent," she said softly, "it is remarkable how much has changed and yet how much remains the same. You have guided humanity well, and yet I am reminded of that first encounter. When you walked away, I understand it now more than I did then. That choice, it revealed much about you and about your people." Elias regarded her calmly. "Your Majesty, every civilization has its strengths. Humans are no exception. That moment was not about proving anything. It was about showing that we act with purpose even when challenged. Strength is measured not only in what one can do, but in what one chooses not to do." Lysera nodded slowly, a faint smile on her lips. "Indeed, and it seems humans have learned much from observing others as well. You are patient, careful, and steadfast, qualities I once underestimated." Their conversation lingered, filled with mutual respect and quiet understanding. Neither needed to speak of the past insult directly. It was acknowledged in their eyes, in their demeanor, and in the knowledge that both had grown because of it. By the end of the visit, Elias and his delegation had established preliminary agreements with the Galathian Empire. Trade routes were negotiated, exploration initiatives discussed, and a framework for future cooperation outlined. Humanity's place among the stars had been strengthened, not through conflict, but through diplomacy guided by wisdom, patience, and character. Lysera, observing the results, realized that the first impression of humans, one of impulsiveness and weakness, was no longer valid. Elias Trent, through his actions both past and present, had shown her that humans were capable of endurance, insight, and quiet strength. As they prepared to part ways, Lysera spoke privately. "Commander Trent, I once misjudged you. That is no longer the case. I respect the man you are and the people you lead. Perhaps one day we will see how far this alliance can go." Elias bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, it has been an honor. Humanity looks forward to working with Galathia in mutual respect and understanding." As he left the palace, Elias felt a sense of closure. The past insult had faded, replaced by a recognition of shared goals, mutual respect, and a new chapter in interstellar relations. The walkaway, once a moment of restraint, had become a foundation for diplomacy, proving that patience, dignity, and quiet strength could achieve far more than anger or pride ever could. For Queen Lysera, the reunion had been a lesson in humility and understanding. For Elias Trent, it had been a confirmation that humanity was ready to take its place among the stars, not through force, but through character, patience, and the quiet power of action measured by purpose rather than impulse. And as the human fleet departed Galathia, the story of the walkaway continued to echo across the galaxy, not as a moment of insult, but as a symbol of what humans could achieve when they acted with wisdom, patience, and integrity. The calm of the Galathian Empire was not destined to last. Weeks after the human delegation had returned to Earth, intelligence reports revealed unrest brewing within the Empire. A radical faction, resentful of Lysera's progressive leadership and skeptical of humans, sought to challenge the fragile diplomatic ties that had been established. Commander Elias Trent received the news aboard the Aurora Prime. His brow furrowed as he studied the data. The faction was planning a public demonstration, an attempt to humiliate the human delegation during the upcoming ceremonial exchange of trade agreements. They intended to provoke conflict, believing that humans would react impulsively and undermine their own credibility. Elias knew that this was more than a political challenge. It was a test of human character. "Mara," he said, turning to his trusted second-in-command, "this is exactly the kind of situation we prepared for. The question is not whether we can defend ourselves, but how we respond. Patience, clarity, and strategy will determine the outcome." Mara nodded, her expression firm. "Yes, Commander. We will handle it as you instruct." Meanwhile, in Galathia, Queen Lysera had learned of the plot. The radical faction sought to embarrass the humans, challenge her authority, and weaken the trust she had carefully built with Commander Trent and his people. She faced a difficult decision: act forcefully to suppress the radicals or allow them to demonstrate their contempt and risk escalating tension. Lysera chose caution. She contacted Elias discreetly, explaining the situation. "Commander Trent," she said, her tone steady, "there are elements within my empire who wish to provoke your delegation. They hope to see you respond in anger. I trust that you will act with the same composure that first impressed my court 23 years ago." Elias allowed a small smile. "Your Majesty, I remember that day well. Humans do not need to react impulsively. We understand the value of patience. We will navigate this situation carefully." The day of the ceremonial exchange arrived. The Grand Plaza was filled with Galathian citizens, officials, and diplomats from various allied worlds. Towering crystalline structures gleamed in the sunlight, and banners fluttered in the wind, displaying both Galathian and human symbols. As Elias stepped onto the plaza, he could sense the tension in the air. The radical faction was present, their expressions sharp, their movements calculated to provoke. They had arranged for a series of disruptions: false accusations, staged mishaps, and subtle attempts to embarrass the humans in front of thousands. Yet Elias remained calm. He walked with measured steps, his gaze steady and his demeanor unshakable. Mara and the rest of the delegation mirrored his composure, responding to challenges not with anger but with precise, thoughtful action. The first provocation came swiftly. A Galathian official attempted to interrupt the signing of the trade agreements, questioning the humans' ability to fulfill their promises. Many would have reacted defensively. Many would have responded with sharp words or gestures. Elias, however, listened carefully, acknowledged the concerns respectfully, and addressed them calmly, presenting clear evidence of human capability. The crowd murmured. Some were surprised. Others, previously skeptical, began to see the human delegation in a new light. Next came a more direct challenge. The radical faction orchestrated a public malfunction during the demonstration of new technology, hoping to blame the humans and create confusion. Crowds gasped as the display faltered, and the radicals pointed accusingly at the human delegation. Elias stepped forward. Without raising his voice or showing irritation, he assessed the situation quickly. "The malfunction is minor," he said, speaking clearly so all could hear. "We can correct it immediately." With a few calm instructions, the humans repaired the system efficiently, demonstrating competence and control. The crowd erupted in quiet applause, impressed by the human delegation's skill under pressure. Throughout the events, Queen Lysera observed closely. Her advisors had warned her that the radicals might succeed in provoking a confrontation, but Elias's response was flawless. He did not retaliate. He did not falter. His calm intelligence, combined with strategic action, disarmed the radicals without any need for force. By the end of the ceremonial exchange, the radicals' attempts had failed completely. Not only had the humans maintained dignity, but they had also earned the respect of many Galathians who had initially doubted them. The faction's influence began to wane, their plans undone by the quiet strength of one man and his team. Afterward, Lysera invited Elias to meet privately in the palace gardens once more. The twin moons cast silver light over the crystal paths, and the air was filled with the soft hum of alien flora. She regarded him with a mixture of admiration and reflection. "Commander Trent," she said softly, "you have proven much more than I could have imagined. The radicals hoped to humiliate humanity, but instead, you have shown them strength, intelligence, and restraint. I understand now that your actions 23 years ago were not a moment of weakness, but a demonstration of wisdom." Elias nodded. "Your Majesty, humans are capable of both action and patience. It is not necessary to react to every insult or provocation. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in control, observation, and measured response. That lesson has guided us for years, and it has guided me today." Lysera's eyes softened. "You have taught me as well. I underestimated humans once, but now I see their potential. And I see yours, your calm, your clarity, your ability to act without haste. It is remarkable." Elias allowed himself a faint smile. "The galaxy is vast, Your Majesty. Every civilization has its strengths. Humans have learned that patience, understanding, and integrity can be as powerful as weapons. And today those lessons have been tested. Lysera nodded, the faintest trace of a smile on her lips. Indeed, today has shown that diplomacy, intelligence, and patience can overcome even deliberate attempts to provoke. You have demonstrated what humans can achieve, not by force, but by character. The two stood quietly, reflecting on the events of the day. For Lysera, it was a moment of humility and understanding. For Elias, it was confirmation that humanity's reputation and influence had grown, shaped not by impulsive reactions, but by consistent demonstration of skill, patience, and integrity. Later, in private conversation with her advisors, Lysera emphasized the importance of learning from humans. "Commander Trent has shown us the value of calm, strategic thinking," she said. "We must not judge other civilizations solely by their reactions. Strength can take many forms, and the quiet, steady actions of one man have altered our perception of an entire species." Back aboard the Aurora Prime, Elias debriefed his team. "Today was more than a test of skill or strategy," he said. "It was a test of character. Diplomacy is not always about immediate victories. Sometimes it is about endurance, patience, and choosing the right moment to act. Remember this, because humanity's place among the stars will depend on it." Mara Chen nodded. "We've seen it firsthand, Commander. You've shown the entire delegation what it means to act with wisdom and restraint. I think even the Galathians have learned something today." Elias looked out at the stars, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. The galaxy was a complex, unpredictable place filled with civilizations of all kinds. Challenges would come, provocations would occur, and conflicts would arise. But humanity had proven that it could face adversity with dignity, intelligence, and patience. He knew that the story of the day would be told for decades, another chapter in the legend of the human who had walked away 23 years ago and now returned to prove that restraint, skill, and character could triumph over provocation and prejudice. And somewhere in the palace gardens of Galathia, Lysera reflected on the events with newfound respect. The radical faction had been thwarted not by force, but by the quiet, measured actions of a single human. She realized that strength was not always loud, and that character and wisdom could leave a lasting impact on history. The test had ended. The humans had succeeded, diplomacy had prevailed, and the galaxy had witnessed a new example of human capability. It was a reminder to all that the walkaway, once a moment of silent dignity, had grown into a symbol of patience, intelligence, and enduring strength. As Elias prepared to depart, he understood that the true test was never complete. The galaxy would continue to challenge humanity, but with lessons learned, patience practiced, and dignity maintained, they were ready for whatever lay ahead. And for Lysera, the quiet lessons of a human who had walked away all those years ago continued to resonate. She knew that the path forward would require cooperation, trust, and recognition of the strengths found not only in her people, but in the humans she had once underestimated. The story of restraint, strategy, and character had become legend, and both humans and Galathians understood that true strength could be quiet, steady, and enduring. The galaxy had changed in the 23 years since Elias Trent first walked away from Princess Lysera's insult. Humans had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. Interstellar travel had expanded human influence, and diplomacy with alien civilizations had become a cornerstone of humanity's strategy. Yet despite all the progress, Elias never forgot the lessons learned in that first encounter. Now, as the Aurora Prime approached Galathia once again, he carried not only the human delegation, but also the weight of responsibility. This was no longer a simple mission. It was a chance to solidify alliances that could determine the future of the galaxy. Every decision, every word, and every gesture mattered. Lysera, queen of the Galathian Empire, waited in the palace gardens to greet them. The twin moons bathed the crystalline structures in silver light, reflecting the calm majesty of the empire. She had followed humanity's progress carefully over the years, observing how Elias's leadership had shaped his people. She respected humans now, not merely for their technological advancements, but for their patience, their wisdom, and the quiet strength they displayed under pressure. "Commander Trent," she said as he stepped from the transport, "it is good to see you again. I trust your journey was safe." Elias inclined his head respectfully.
"Your Majesty, the journey was smooth and the fleet performed admirably."
"We are pleased to return to Galathia as partners in the work ahead." Lysera studied him carefully, recalling the man who had walked away from her insult decades ago. Time had changed them both, Yet the qualities that had defined him, calmness, dignity, and unwavering confidence, remained. "It is remarkable," she said softly, "how the passage of years can transform understanding. Your actions all those years ago planted seeds of respect, and now humanity has grown to demonstrate it in ways I could not have imagined." Elias allowed himself a faint smile. "Strength is not always measured in words, Your Majesty. Sometimes it is shown through patience, consistency, and the choices we make even when provoked." They walked together through the palace gardens, the soft hum of alien flora accompanying their conversation. Discussions turned to the formal matters of diplomacy, trade agreements, mutual defense, and exploration initiatives. Yet beneath the surface of official dialogue lay the understanding forged over decades, a bond of respect between two civilizations, built not on coercion, but on character. The final test came unexpectedly. A neighboring empire, observing the growing influence of humans and Galathians, threatened to disrupt the alliance. They sent envoys to Galathia, demanding concessions and attempting to create tension between the two civilizations. The situation was delicate. A single misstep could spark conflict, undoing decades of careful diplomacy. Elias approached the challenge with the same measured calm that had defined his career. He listened carefully to the demands, asked precise questions, and proposed solutions that balanced both human and Galathian interests. His team mirrored his composure, handling details efficiently, leaving no room for miscommunication. Lysera watched closely. She realized that the humans' approach was not only effective but instructive. Unlike impulsive leaders who might have reacted angrily or defensively, Elias acted with patience, ensuring that every decision reinforced trust and understanding. She began to see humanity's potential not just in technology or numbers, but in their ability to navigate complex situations with dignity and strategy. The negotiations extended over several days. Each session tested patience, intelligence, and diplomacy. Yet the result was clear. The neighboring empire, impressed by the clarity and fairness of the humans and Galathians, withdrew their aggressive demands. The alliance was strengthened, and tensions dissolved without any need for confrontation. After the negotiations, Elias and Lysera met in private once more. The air was filled with the soft light of the moons, and the palace gardens seemed to hum with quiet satisfaction. "Commander Trent," Lysera said thoughtfully, "it is clear now that humans are more than capable allies. I underestimated your species once, and I am grateful for the lesson. Your patience, clarity, and wisdom have earned not just respect but lasting trust." Elias inclined his head. "Your Majesty, humans have always sought to prove themselves through action, not words. Today is a reminder that integrity, patience, and understanding are as important as strength or skill. That lesson guided me 23 years ago, and it continues to guide us now." Lysera smiled, a rare warmth in her eyes. "It seems that the walkaway then was not an end but a beginning. A lesson for both of us and for our peoples. History often remembers words, but actions, quiet as they may be, leave a deeper mark." Elias looked out at the distant horizon. The galaxy was vast and filled with challenges, yet humanity had proven it could navigate complexity without losing dignity. The walkaway, once a simple act of restraint, had become a symbol, a testament to the power of patience, understanding, and integrity. "You have changed the way my people view humans," Lysera continued. "What began as curiosity, perhaps even doubt, has grown into respect. And through your leadership, that respect has become a foundation for future collaboration." Elias allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He thought about the young officer who had first stepped into the Galathian court, uncertain but determined. He remembered the sting of the insult, the tension of the moment, and the decision to walk away rather than engage. That choice had shaped decades of human-Galathian relations. It had created opportunities, fostered trust, and demonstrated that humans could act with wisdom under pressure. "It is not about one person," Elias said quietly. "It is about the people we lead and the values we uphold. Humanity's strength lies not only in skill or technology, but in the ability to endure, to observe, and to act with clarity and integrity." Lysera nodded. "And it is those qualities that will ensure peace and cooperation between our civilizations. The lesson of patience, the value of dignity, and the power of restraint, these are not forgotten." Later, Elias returned to the Aurora Prime and addressed his team. Today we have witnessed the results of what we have always known. Patience, preparation, and integrity matter. They matter more than pride or impulsive reactions. Humanity's path among the stars depends on these qualities, and we have proven that we are ready to navigate the challenges ahead. Mara Chen, standing nearby, smiled. Commander, the galaxy has seen humans at their best. Your guidance has turned a challenge into a demonstration of our capabilities. We have shown that strength is not only in might but in wisdom and composure. Elias nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction. He knew the story of the walkaway. Once a simple act of restraint had come full circle. What had begun as a single choice decades ago had become a legacy, influencing diplomacy, alliances, and the perception of humanity throughout the galaxy. As the human fleet departed Galathea, Elias reflected on the journey. He thought about the lessons learned, the challenges faced, and the respect earned. The galaxy was still vast, full of mysteries and uncertainties. But humanity had proven its potential, not through aggression, but through character, patience, and careful action. Back in the palace gardens, Lysera watched the fleet disappear among the stars. She smiled, knowing that the human who had once walked away from her insult had done more than preserve dignity. He had built a bridge between civilizations. His actions, quiet yet powerful, would inspire generations of leaders, diplomats, and citizens alike. The walkaway had become legend, not because it was dramatic, not because it was confrontational, but because it demonstrated the enduring strength of humanity. It was a reminder that patience, dignity, and wisdom could achieve what anger and pride could not. And as the moons of Galathea rose higher in the sky, Elias Trent stood at the helm of his ship, looking toward the stars. He knew that humanity's journey was far from over, but he also knew that with patience, integrity, and steadfast character, humans could face any challenge the galaxy presented. The story, which had begun with a single act of restraint, had grown into a legacy. It was a lesson for humans and aliens alike, that true strength often lies in quiet choices, in patience, in wisdom, and in the ability to rise above insults without losing dignity. And so, humanity's place in the galaxy was secure, not through power alone, but through the enduring qualities that defined its people. Elias Trent had shown that sometimes walking away was not weakness, but the first step toward lasting respect, trust, and unity. The galaxy remembered, and history would remember, the human who had walked away, and the empire that had learned to respect him for it.